At 6:42 p.m., she kissed me on the cheek and said, "Don't wait up." It was casual, dismissive, like I was just a piece of furniture she walked past on the way out the door. I barely reacted, just nodded, half distracted by my phone. Because why would I question it? She was supposed to be meeting her coworkers for drinks after work. Something she did every few weeks. Nothing unusual. Nothing suspicious. Just a normal night. Or at least it should have been. But something felt wrong. Maybe it was the way she barely looked at me before she left. Or how her voice had that tight, forced lightness, like she was acting out a script. Or maybe it was nothing, just my brain latching onto meaningless details. I let it go, for a while, until 11:13 p.m., when I sent a simple, "You good?" No response. At 11:45 p.m., I sent another, "Everything okay?" Still nothing. At 12:30, I called, straight to voicemail. At 12:45, I checked her location. She had it shared with me, her idea actually, back when she used to say things like, "Just in case something ever happens to me." I never had a reason to use it before. But now, as I stared at my screen, I realized that something had already happened. She wasn't at a bar. She wasn't at work. She wasn't at Katie's house. She was at a hotel, 30 minutes from home. I blinked, stared, refreshed the app, as if that would somehow change what I was seeing. Didn't. My heart was pounding. My breath was shallow. But I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my keys, threw on my jacket, and drove. The whole way there, I told myself I was wrong. That there was an explanation. That she got too drunk and crashed at a hotel instead of driving home. That she wasn't doing what every bone in my body already knew she was doing. At 1:24 a.m., I pulled into the hotel parking lot. At 1:26, I walked through the lobby. At 1:28, I was standing outside room 314. Her location said she was still inside. I knocked once. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. I knocked a third time, loud enough that it echoed down the hallway. And then the door opened. Not all the way, just a crack. Just enough for me to see her standing there, wrapped in a hotel robe, mascara smudged beneath her eyes. And just enough for me to see the man behind her. Her boss, shirtless, looking at me like I was the one who didn't belong there. I didn't move. I didn't speak. My brain just stopped. There was something primal about catching your wife like this, something that reached into the deepest part of you and set it on fire. My vision blurred at the edges. My pulse roared in my ears, but my body stayed frozen in place. Because for a few precious seconds, I wanted to believe I had misread the situation. That wasn't her. That wasn't her boss standing behind her, half naked. That wasn't my marriage crumbling into dust in front of me. But then she spoke. And those words, those first words, told me everything I needed to know. "What are you doing here?" Not, "It's not what it looks like." Not, "I can explain." Not even a single shred of guilt or panic. Just annoyance. Like I was the one ruining her night. I didn't answer. Couldn't. She pulled the robe tighter around herself, barely looking me in the eye. Behind her, her boss, Nathan, stood there with his arms crossed, like this was some kind of minor inconvenience, like he wasn't standing in a hotel room at 1 a.m. with another man's wife. And then he made the mistake of opening his mouth. "I think you should leave." Something inside me snapped. I shoved the door open so hard it hit the wall, stepping into the room before either of them could stop me. The air was thick with the scent of alcohol and expensive cologne. The sheets on the bed were a mess, and my wife, the woman who used to trace my face with her fingertips and swear I was the love of her life, had the audacity to step in front of him, to shield him. "Are you serious?" I finally found my voice, though it sounded like it belonged to someone else. Someone far more dangerous. "You're really doing this?" She rolled her eyes. "It's not a big deal." "Not big deal." I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Rubbing a hand over my face like that would somehow make this moment disappear. "Not a big deal?" My voice was too calm, too controlled, the kind of calm that came right before a storm. "You left me at home, lied to me, came here to. It was one night." She cut me off with a shrug, like I had just caught her sneaking a cigarette instead of wrecking our marriage. "It doesn't have to be this dramatic. One night," She said it like that made it better. I took a slow, measured step forward, looking her in the eyes for the first time since she opened that door. She wasn't ashamed. She wasn't sorry. There wasn't a single ounce of regret in her expression. Only irritation that I had shown up and ruined whatever the hell this was supposed to be. Nathan had the nerve to sigh. "Look, man." I didn't let him finish. I turned on my heel, walked out of that room, and slammed the door behind me so hard the walls shook. I made it halfway down the hall before she called after me. Not to apologize, not to explain, but to say the one thing that made me realize she was already gone. "Don't act like this is the end of the world." I didn't stop, didn't turn back, because for her it wasn't. But for me it was. I don't remember driving home. I must have, obviously, because I woke up in my own bed the next morning. But the whole ride was a blur. My hands must have known where to go. My body must have gone through the motions. But my mind was trapped in that hotel room, replaying every single detail on an endless loop. The robe, the way she barely looked at me, the way she stood in front of him like he was the one who needed protecting. I didn't sleep. How could I? I sat in the dark, staring at the wall, waiting. Not for an apology, I knew I wasn't getting that. But for something. A text. A call. Some acknowledgement that she had set fire to our entire life. Nothing. She didn't come home. She didn't even try to. It wasn't until 10:30 the next morning that the front door finally opened. I didn't get up to meet her. I didn't move at all. Just sat there at the kitchen table, gripping a coffee mug so tightly my knuckles ached as I listened to her heels click against the floor. She didn't hesitate, didn't creep in like a guilty person, just strolled in like she always did, like she had spent the night at a friend's place, like nothing had happened. She walked straight to the fridge, pulled out a bottle of water, and had the nerve to sigh like she was the one who had been wronged. Then she finally turned to me, and the first words out of her mouth, "Are we really doing this?" Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I made a mistake." Just annoyance. I placed the mug down carefully, too carefully. "Doing what?" She rolled her eyes, unscrewing the cap of her water. "This whole sulking thing. Sulking. Sulking." Something inside me shifted. A cold kind of clarity slicing through the haze of rage and exhaustion. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "You didn't even come home." She took a sip of water, unfazed. "I figured you needed time to cool off." "Cool off," I repeated slowly, like the words weren't computing. "Cool off from what, exactly?" "The fact that my wife left me for her boss for one night, and it ruined everything." She exhaled, rubbing her temples like I was giving her a headache, like I was the one making this difficult. "It was just a stupid mistake." I let out a sharp, bitter laugh, shaking my head. "A mistake." She nodded like that settled it. "Yeah, a mistake. I had too much to drink, one thing led to another, and..." She trailed off with a shrug, like that was a reasonable way to end that sentence. "Ist here. You were sober when you left the house." Her expression didn't change. "I got drunk later." "Drunk enough to forget you were married?" She finally had the audacity to look irritated. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" I pushed. "Explain it to me." She huffed out a breath, placing the water bottle on the counter. "Jesus, do you want me to beg for forgiveness? Cry and grovel at your feet? I told you it was a mistake. It's not like I'm leaving you." Something inside me cracked. "Not like you're leaving me?" I repeated, voice dangerously quiet. She shrugged again, as if this was a normal conversation, as if she hadn't shattered everything and expected me to just sweep up the pieces. I laughed again, but this time it wasn't bitter. It was freeing, because in that moment I knew she wasn't sorry. She would never be sorry. And I was done. I stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor, the sound cutting through the thick, suffocating tension between us. She barely flinched, just watched me with that same blank, irritated expression, like I was the one dragging this out longer than necessary. "Where are you going?" she asked, exasperated, like I had just announced I was leaving in the middle of a dinner party. I ignored her, walked straight past her, past the fridge, past the memories we had built in this house, and straight to the bedroom. I could hear her heels clicking behind me as she followed, her voice sharper now. "Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic." "Dramatic? Dramatic. I clenched my jaw, breathing through the overwhelming urge to slam something. Instead, I yanked my closet open and grabbed the first duffel bag I could find. She let out a short laugh, disbelieving. Are you serious right now? I didn't answer, just started throwing clothes into the bag. T-shirts, jeans, pair of sneakers. I didn't even register what I was packing. Didn't care. I just needed to get out of there before I did something I'd regret. She stepped into the doorway, crossing her arms. So what? You're leaving. I zipped up the bag and finally turned to face her. What else is there to do? My voice came out eerily calm, even to my own ears. Her eyebrows shot up. Oh my God, you're actually serious. No, I'm just role-playing as a guy whose wife just admitted to screwing her boss. I slung the bag over my shoulder, brushing past her. She grabbed my wrist. Grabbed me. Can you stop for 1 second? I yanked my arm away so fast she actually stumbled back. What? I snapped, finally letting some of the anger leak through. What could you possibly have to say that's worth listening to? She scowled. I said it was a mistake. A mistake is leaving the oven on. I shot back. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. You made a choice. She scoffed, like I was being ridiculous. And then she said the one thing that made me see red. If you weren't so boring, maybe I wouldn't have needed a break. I froze. For a second, all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. Then I exhaled through my nose, nodding slowly. Got it. She must have realized she'd gone too far, because her expression shifted. I didn't mean. No, you did. I stepped back, gripping the strap of my bag so hard my fingers ached. And you know what? Thank you. Her forehead creased. For what? For making this really, really easy. I turned, walked out of that room, and left. She didn't stop me. She didn't chase after me. She didn't even call my name. She just let me go. And that was the moment I realized she had been gone long before that night, that I didn't have a plan. I got in my car, tossed the bag in the passenger seat, and just drove. I didn't know where I was going, didn't even care. I just needed to put distance between myself and that house, that woman, that pathetic excuse for a life I had been blindly clinging to. The roads were empty, the city lights blurring past me in streaks of gold and red. The anger was still there, burning low in my gut, but underneath it, something else was taking shape, something heavier, something colder, because no matter how fast I drove, no matter how many streets I turned down, one thought kept circling back. She didn't care. Not a tear. Not an apology. Not even an ounce of hesitation when I walked out the door. She let me go like I was nothing, like the past 10 years were nothing. And maybe I had been nothing to her for a long time. I gritted my teeth, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. I couldn't think about that. Not now. Not when my entire world was unraveling at the seams. At some point, I pulled into a gas station parking lot. The neon lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a sickly glow. I leaned back in my seat, staring at the ceiling, trying to catch my breath. Then my phone buzzed. For a split second, just one, a stupid, pathetic part of me thought it might be her. That maybe, finally, the weight of what she had done had settled in, that maybe she had come to her senses. But it wasn't her. It was my best friend, Eric. Eric! Yo, dude. You okay? I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. Of course he knew. He worked in finance, but he had always said office gossip moved faster than the stock market. I didn't reply. A minute later, another text. Eric, saw the news at work. Call me. My stomach twisted. The news? I clenched my phone, hesitating. Then, before I could talk myself out of it, I tapped the call button. Eric picked up on the first ring. Dude. I exhaled sharply. How bad is it? There was a pause. Then a sharp inhale. Do you want the truth? No, not even a little. But I forced the words out anyway. Yeah. Eric let out a low whistle. It's everywhere, man. Office chat, client meetings, even HR got involved. People are calling her the CEO's pet project. My stomach dropped. HR. She was literally sleeping with her boss, bro. It's a PR nightmare. The higher-ups are freaking out. I dragged a hand down my face. Of course. She hadn't just torched our marriage. She had thrown a match into her own career, too. And Nathan? I forced out. Eric snorted. Oh, he's screwed. Married with 2 kids. His wife found out before you did. I blinked. What? Oh yeah. Some anonymous email. Eric clicked his tongue. Screenshots, timestamps, everything. Dude's entire life exploded yesterday. Yesterday. Before I even knew. Something cold slithered down my spine. Do you have the email? Eric hesitated. I mean, yeah. Send it to me. You sure? Eric. My voice was low. Send it. A second later, my phone buzzed. An email popped up. I opened it. And what I saw made me realize I hadn't even begun to understand just how deep this betrayal went that I clicked on the email. My heartbeat pounded in my ears as the message loaded. My fingers gripping the phone so tightly I thought I might crack the screen. The subject line alone was enough to make my stomach churn. Your wife and Nathan, read this. No greeting. No explanation. Just a single sentence in bold at the top. If you think this was a one-time thing, think again. And then the screenshots started. Text messages. Call logs. Photos. The first few messages were flirty, nothing outright damning, inside jokes, a few too many heart emojis. But as I scrolled further, the words sharpened. The implications got clearer. And then, there it was, a message from 3 months ago. From her. To him. I wish I was waking up next to you instead. I inhaled sharply through my nose. 3 months. Not a drunken mistake. Not a lapse in judgment. 3 goddamn months. I kept scrolling, my breath coming shorter, my vision tunneling. Nathan, your husband doesn't suspect anything? Her. He's clueless. I don't think he'd even care if he found out. I nearly threw my phone across the car. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing air into my lungs. She really thought that little of me? That I wouldn't even care? That I was just some placeholder, a background character in her life while she played out her real romance behind my back? But it wasn't over. More messages. Hotel bookings. Reservations under his name. Multiple dates. Photos. One of them in a restaurant. Another of them in an elevator. Her looking up at him with that stupid, coy smile she used to give me. The timestamps blurred together, stretching back months. And then, at the very bottom of the email, one final sentence. Thought you should know the truth. A friend. A friend. Someone on the inside. Someone who had been watching this unfold for months. Someone who knew before I did. I let out a bitter, shaky laugh, running a hand through my hair. How many people had known? How many coworkers had looked at me while knowing my wife was screwing her boss? How many had pitied me, whispered behind my back, laughed about the clueless husband while my wife wove lie after lie? Humiliation settled in, thick and suffocating. I dropped my phone onto the passenger seat and gripped the steering wheel, staring at nothing. 3 months. How many times had I kissed her after she was with him? How many nights had she come home to me, acting like nothing happened? How many times had I been the punchline of her secret joke? A shaky exhale left my chest. I sat there, the weight of it pressing down on me, crushing me. And then, something shifted. A slow, creeping realization. I wasn't sad anymore. No, sadness had been burned away. What replaced it was something sharper. Something colder. If she wanted to treat me like a joke, like an idiot, fine. But the joke was about to be on her that I stared at my phone. My pulse pounding, my mind racing. 3 months. 3 whole months of deception, of lying straight to my face, of thinking I wouldn't even care if I found out. She had played me for a fool. And she had won because up until now I had been one. But not anymore. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to sit in a gas station parking lot and drown in self-pity while she carried on with her life like nothing happened. I was going to destroy her. I picked up my phone again and called Eric back. He answered on the first ring. Dude, you good? I ignored the question. Does HR know everything? He hesitated. Well, officially they're still investigating. But yeah, they know. It's bad. Bad how? Eric let out a low whistle. Nathan was her direct supervisor. Power imbalance. Company policy violation. They can't sweep this under the rug even if they wanted to. I leaned back against the headrest, my mind working faster than it ever had before. She had no idea. She thought she had gotten away with it. Thought she could just walk back into our house, brush this off as a mistake, and go back to her cushy job while I crawled off somewhere to lick my wounds. But she didn't know she was about to lose everything. I exhaled sharply. What happens next? For Nathan? Termination. Probably divorce, too. His wife's already making calls. Good. Screw him. And her. That's trickier, Eric admitted. The company's handling it internally, but between you and me, she's done. They can't fire her outright without covering their legal bases. But it's only a matter of time before they push her out. Perfect. I could work with that. I started the car, gripping the wheel. How long do I have before she finds out? Eric exhaled. A day, maybe 2, before it reaches her. That was all I needed. I drove home, not in a blind rage, not in a haze of heartbreak, but with purpose. She had played her game. Now it was my turn. When I walked through the front door, she was in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. She didn't even look up. Oh, you're back. That was the moment I knew I had been right all along. She wasn't worried. She wasn't afraid. Because in her mind, she had already won. She had no idea she was standing on a sinking ship. I set my keys down, watching her carefully. Yeah. She took a sip of water, glancing at me with mild curiosity. So, are you done being mad? Or do I have to deal with more of your little tantrum? My fingers curled into fists. Not yet. Stay calm. Stay patient. Let her dig her own grave. I tilted my head. You really think this is just going to blow over, don't you? She sighed dramatically, setting her phone down. I think you're making it a bigger deal than it is. I hummed. Right? Because it was just one night, wasn't it? She nodded, oblivious. Exactly. So can we just move on? I smiled, and then I took out my phone, opened the email, and slid it across the table. Sure. But first, explain this. Her brow furrowed. Then she looked down, and her entire world shifted. Her face went pale. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through the screenshots. I crossed my arms, watching the horror settle in. She finally understood. Finally realized she wasn't in control anymore. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Where did you get this? Does it matter? My voice was light, almost amused. She looked up at me, panic creeping into her features. It's not what it looks like. I leaned forward, my voice dropping. It's exactly what it looks like. She swallowed hard, frantically searching for an escape. But there wasn't one. I had her cornered. And I wasn't done yet. Her eyes darted across the screen, her breathing uneven. For the first time since this entire disaster started, I saw something that had been missing before. Fear. Not guilt. Not remorse. Fear. And not the kind that comes from hurting someone you love. The kind that comes from realizing you've been caught. She looked up at me, her lips parting, but I raised a hand. Not this time. No excuses. My voice was quiet, sharp as glass. No, it was a mistake. No, it didn't mean anything. I'm done listening to you lie to my face. She swallowed hard, placing the phone down carefully like it was a loaded weapon. Maybe because, in a way, it was, she exhaled shakily, choosing her words. Who sent this to you? I let out a cold chuckle. That's what you're worried about? I leaned forward, placing my elbows on the table. Not the fact that you've been caught lying for months. Not the fact that everyone at your job knows what you did. Not the fact that you've been treating me like an idiot this entire time. She flinched at that last part. I wasn't sure if it was from guilt or just from realizing how deeply she had miscalculated. I tilted my head, watching her like she was a cornered animal. Did you really think I wouldn't care? Her jaw clenched. I didn't mean that. I scoffed. Oh, you meant every word. I gestured at the phone. You were so confident. So sure that I wouldn't do a damn thing even if I found out. She shook her head, forcing a weak, watery smile. I didn't think it would go this far. I stared at her, letting the silence stretch. That was it? That was her explanation? She didn't regret doing it. She regretted getting caught. Something inside me settled. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just done. I leaned back in my chair, stretching my arms lazily, watching as she anxiously toyed with the hem of her sleeve. You should probably start looking for a new job. Her head snapped up. What? I smirked. Oh, you didn't know? I feigned surprise. I guess HR hasn't called you yet. Her face drained of color. What are you talking about? I stood up, stretching my shoulders. They know. Everyone knows. She blinked. That's not possible. I gave her a slow, satisfied smile. Nathan's wife found out before I did. Her breath hitched. No. Oh, yes. I grabbed my phone, unlocking it. And she didn't just take it out on him. She went straight for the kill. I flipped the screen toward her. Anonymous email. Detailed report. And guess what? I grinned. It worked. She snatched the phone from my hands, scanning the text. Her fingers gripping the edges so tightly they turned white. I could see it happening in real time, the slow, dawning realization that she had lost everything. Her career, her reputation, the power she thought she had over me. She dropped my phone onto the table and took a shaky breath, straightening her shoulders like she was trying to regain some sense of control. Okay, she exhaled. Okay, we can fix this. I raised an eyebrow. We? She nodded quickly. Yeah. We don't have to let this ruin everything. I can talk to HR. Explain that it wasn't like that. I laughed, loud and sharp. Are you serious? Her eyes flashed. Yes, you can back me up. You can tell them this was just a misunderstanding, that our marriage is fine. Our marriage. I cut her off, amusement flickering through me. You think we still have a marriage? She inhaled sharply, and for the first time, real desperation crept into her expression. She had never considered that I might leave. She had assumed through all of this that I would stay, that I would take the hit, swallow the betrayal, let her get away with it. I shook my head, exhaling through my nose. Wow! I let out a humorless chuckle. You really thought I'd just what? Forgive you? She bit her lip. People move past these things. We have history. We have a life together. I cut her off with a sharp laugh. We had a life together. You killed it. She blinked rapidly, her throat bobbing. But you still love me. The words hung in the air between us. For a moment, I didn't answer. I just looked at her, the woman I had built a future with, the woman I had trusted, the woman I thought I knew. Did I love her? Maybe, in some distant, tragic way, I still did. Maybe some part of me always would. But love wasn't enough. Not anymore. So I met her gaze, and for the first time in our entire relationship, I told her the truth. No. Her breath caught. I let the silence sink in, let her sit with those words the way I had to sit with her betrayal. Then I grabbed my car keys and walked toward the door. She didn't stop me this time. She didn't say a word. And as I stepped outside, leaving her standing in the wreckage of everything she had destroyed, I realized something. I wasn't the one losing anything. She was. I stepped outside, inhaling the cold night air, letting it fill my lungs. Freedom. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt like I could breathe. No more waiting for the other shoe to drop. No more second-guessing my instincts. No more living with someone who had been slowly killing me from the inside out. I walked to my car, my footsteps steady, my heart pounding for all the right reasons. But I wasn't done yet. I sat in the driver's seat, drumming my fingers against the wheel, my mind running through every possible way to end this the right way, the final way. And then, it hit me. I smirked, pulling out my phone and dialing Eric. He picked up immediately. What's up? I need a favor. Name it. I leaned back, staring at the house I was about to walk away from for good. Get me in touch with Nathan's wife. Silence. Then, a low whistle. Oh, you're really going for the jugular. I grinned. Damn right I am. By the next morning, I was sitting in a coffee shop across from Lisa Dawson, Nathan's wife. She was stunning, cold, composed, the kind of woman who commanded every room she walked into. But there was something hollow behind her eyes, something shattered beneath the perfect exterior. She had been humiliated, just like me. She sipped her coffee, her sharp gaze studying me. So, you're him. I tilted my head. Him. The husband, she said simply, setting down her cup. And you're the wife, I countered. Her lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. Looks like we both got screwed over. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling through my nose. Yeah, and I think it's only fair we return the favor. Her eyes flickered with interest. I'm listening. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the screenshots from the anonymous email. You probably saw most of this already, but there's more. I slid the phone across the table. Lisa picked it up, her expression unreadable as she scrolled. She didn't flinch. Not once. When she finished, she placed the phone down carefully, steepling her fingers. So what's your plan? I smiled. Well, you're already divorcing him, right? Her mouth twitched. Oh, he doesn't know it yet, but yes. Good, I said, because I want to make sure neither of them walk away from this unscathed. Lisa's eyes gleamed. Go on. I tapped the table. Your lawyers are already coming for him. But my wife, she still thinks she can fix this. She thinks she can talk her way out of it. Maybe keep her job. Maybe even keep her reputation. Lisa raised an eyebrow. And I leaned in. I want to make sure that never happens. A slow smirk spread across her face. You want to bury her. I grinned. I want to make sure she regrets this for the rest of her life. Lisa exhaled, shaking her head. You know, I like you. I shrugged. I like me too. Now more than ever. She picked up her coffee, taking a slow sip. So, how do we destroy them? I exhaled, my grip tightening around my cup. I had a plan. And when we were finished, neither my wife nor her precious boss would have anything left. Lisa leaned forward, her sharp blue eyes locking onto mine. Tell me everything. I smirked, tapping my fingers against the table, my mind assembling the pieces like a puzzle. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about justice. About making sure they didn't get to walk away from this unscathed while we were left picking up the pieces. I took a slow breath. Nathan's already screwed. His career, gone. His marriage, over. His reputation, destroyed. But my wife, I exhaled, shaking my head. She still thinks she can talk her way out of this. Lisa's lips curled. And you want to make sure she can't. Exactly. I leaned in. She's not just losing her job. I'm making sure she loses everything. Lisa studied me for a moment, then nodded approvingly. I like the way you think. She tilted her head. So what's the first move? I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. This. She picked it up, scrolling through the screen, her expression unreadable. Then she let out a soft, amused hum. Oh, this is brutal. I smiled. I thought so. She set the phone down, shaking her head in disbelief. You really sent her parents the screenshots? I leaned back, stretching my arms. Every single one. Lisa let out a sharp laugh. God, I would have paid to see her face when they called her. Oh, I did better than that. I crossed my arms, my smile widening. I was still at the house when they did. Lisa blinked, then leaned forward eagerly. Tell me everything. I let the memory unfold, every delicious detail playing back in my mind. The morning after I showed her the email, my wife had still been in damage control mode. She thought she could fix this. I had stayed calm, silent, just watching her scramble. Then her phone rang. She picked it up, glanced at the screen, and her entire body stiffened. Mom and Dad. I watched, expression blank, as she hesitated. Then slowly she answered. Hi, Mom. Her voice was tight, then panic. What? No. Who told you that? A pause. I could hear her mother's voice even from across the room, sharp and furious. Her face went pale. That's not true. It's not what it looks like. I snorted. Where had I heard that before? She turned toward me then, her eyes wide with realization. She knew. She knew I had sent it. I just smiled at her. She swallowed hard, quickly stepping into the hallway, but it didn't matter. I could hear everything. Mom, please, you don't understand. A pause. Then her face twisted. You're taking his side. Are you serious? Another pause, and then her shoulders slumped. Her mouth parted slightly. You don't want me to come for Christmas? Silence. She lowered the phone, staring at the floor, shattered. I just took a sip of my coffee. Lisa let out a roar of laughter, covering her mouth. Oh my God, you destroyed her. I shrugged, smirking. She deserved it. Lisa wiped a tear from her eye, still chuckling. You, my friend, are a cold-blooded genius. I took another sip of coffee, my expression turning serious. And that's just the beginning. Lisa leaned in, intrigued. What's next? I exhaled slowly. Divorce. And I'm not making it easy. Lisa raised an eyebrow. You going for everything? I grinned. Oh, I'm going for more than everything. Lisa let out a low whistle. You know, I have a damn good lawyer. I met her gaze. You think they'd be interested in 2 clients? She smiled, tilting her cup toward me. I think they'd be thrilled. By the end of the week, the papers were served. By the end of the month, my wife was jobless, friendless, and completely alone. And by the end of the year, I was standing in a brand new apartment, divorce finalized, a whiskey glass in my hand, watching the city lights stretch out in front of me. Lisa had texted me earlier that day. Nathan's officially out of the house. His ex took him for everything. I had just smiled and texted back. So did I. Because in the end, I didn't just walk away from this whole mess. I won.